Qadr, but also significant because it's the night of the passing of our first Imam, Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib, a period of grief, sadness, hopefully reflection that brings us closer to that Imam in a time during that grief, and one that hopefully we can commemorate together. This is the English portion of the program. The Urdu program is going to be later on. We're going to begin the program with the recitation of the Holy Quran. We're going to have Brother Taha Nabavi lead us with that recitation, and we'll bring him up with a loud salawat.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا تتخذوا اليهود والنصارى أولياء بعضهم أولياء بعض ومن يتولهم منكم فإنه منهم إن الله لا يهدي القوم الظالمين فترى الذين في قلوبهم مرض يسارعون فيهم يقولون نخشى أن تصيبنا دائرة فعسى الله أن يأتي بالفتح أو أمر من عنده فيصبحوا على ما أسروا في أنفسهم نادمين ويقول الذين آمنوا أهؤلاء الذين أقسموا بالله جهد أيمانهم إنهم لمعكم حبطت أعمالهم فأصبحوا خاسرين يا أيها الذين آمنوا من يرتد منكم عن دينه فسوف يأتي الله بقوم يحبهم ويحبونه أذلة على المؤمنين عزة على الكافرين أذلة على المؤمنين أعزة على الكافرين يجاهدون في سبيل الله ولا يخافون لومة لائم ذلك فضل الله يؤتيه من يشاء والله واسع عليم إنما وليكم الله ورسوله والذين آمنوا الذين يقيمون الصلاة ويؤتون الزكاة وهم راكعون صدق الله العلي العظيم.
Ahsant. Let's send one more loud salawat for Brother Taha Nabavi. As we experience the emotions of the night and the grief of the night leading to tomorrow, we're going to have some of the members of our community lead us in salam to kind of get into that state of mind. The first is Brother Musa Hassan, which will be leading us in a salam. Let's bring him up with a loud salawat.
Please recite another loud salawat. This is a poem in English about some of the attributes of Imam Ali and how it's mentioned in the Quran, or how they're mentioned in the Quran. Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, your guidance is what the Ummah needs. So why did they refuse to see the guidance you gave through your deeds? Your deeds that are recounted throughout the Quran, and with them a mold for our actions is drawn. In Surah Baqarah, your actions are praised. The selflessness of your noble deed is relayed. The best sleep you ever had, you said, was when you slept in the Prophet's bed. It didn't matter how many swords were ready, the Prophet was safe, so your heart was steady. For you, Allah revealed the verse about the devotees, who gave themselves for Him through all difficulties. And in the end, those devotees are the ones who receive God's kindness, shining brighter than the sun. And who else could this be other than Amir al-Mu'mineen, who always gave sincerely, not seeking fame or glory? Surah Ma'idah describes his charity, his worship, and his humility. When a beggar entered through the masjid doors, he asked for help, but he was scorned. Destitute, he prayed to Allah and was gifted with Imam Ali Sadaqah. Amir al-Mu'mineen, while still in ruku' praying, answered the man's plea and gave him his ring. In his holy family, this generosity is reflected. While they were alive, no orphan was neglected. Eloquently in Surah Al-Insan, we are told of the kindness of Fatima and Ali's household. After their fast, they began to piece their bread, but a beggar knocks on their door, pleading to be fed. Without any resentment, without sorrow in their hearts, they give their food, and with their iftar they part. Again, on the second night, a simple meal they prepared, but when an orphan comes hungry, this meal was meant to be shared. On the last night, a captive arrives, repeating the question. Ahl al-Bayt gives their meal without any hesitation. They live by Zahra's word and first think of their neighbor, so the barakah of giving satisfies their hunger. These blessed ayat guide us all, teaching us how to answer our Imam's call. We pray for his grandson al-Mahdi to bring justice and equality when he stands in front of the Kaaba that opened itself for Ali. Please recite aloud salawat.
Hassan, let's send a loud salawat for Brother Musa. Before we proceed with our next salam, we just want to ask that everyone recite a Fatiha for the marhumin of the sponsors for this evening and the marhumin of all those present. We'll recite the Fatiha after a loud salawat. Inshallah, next we're going to have a salam from Brother Muhammad Ibrahim. We'll bring out Muhammad with a loud salawat. That was not a loud salawat, so let's try another loud salawat.
Salawat. Tell me, Baba. Tell me, Baba. With bloody eyes stands your Zainab next to you. Your eyes are closed and your face is also blue. You'd gone to pray, but what has happened to you? Tell me, Baba. Tell me, Baba. My brothers weep and Abbas is crying too. But you don't speak to them, nor to me you do. I can see blood gushing from your head and neck. What is that wound? What is that wound? Oh my Baba Ali, why have you left me? I'm standing here to make sure that you see blood in my eyes and what has become of me. Tell me, Baba. Tell me, Baba. You used to open your arms and take me in. If I ever cried or if I ever did lament, but now I'm screaming and you're laying silent. Tell me, Baba. Tell me, Baba. Look, I've dressed your wounds, have made them dry too. You'll be fine, I know, come back and hug me soon. My heart's now racing, why am I in a swoon? Tell me, Baba. Tell me, Baba. Now that you're gone, tell me, how can I see you? Come and whisper that I'll be joining you soon. You were my father, but a mother you were too. Tell me, Baba. Tell me, Baba. I can see my mother wailing over you. Her face is white and her eyes are bleeding too. All you've done for them, but how they have treated you. Tell me, Baba. Tell me, Baba. Salawat.
Hassan, let's send one more loud salawat for Brother Muhammad Ibrahim. Next, we're going to have a lecture from our esteemed scholar and benefit from understanding more about the significance of this night and being able to process what it means to have the person whose appointment was viewed as the completion of the deen martyred and taken from the Muslim Ummah. So with that, we'll bring up our esteemed scholar who needs no introduction, Sayyid Sulayman, with a loud salawat.
سورة الفاتحة. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين بارئ الخلائق أجمعين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين المبعوث رحمة للعالمين شفيع المذنبين وحبيب قلوب الصادقين سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم إلى قيام يوم الدين رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Today will be the night in which we remember and mourn the martyrdom of our first Imam, the successor of our Prophet, the brother and the self of our beloved Prophet, and the one who laid the foundation for the continuation of the message of the Prophet, not just in his time, but until our time. Amir al-Mu'mineen wa Imam al-Muttaqeen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhim as-salam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad ali Muhammad. And it was in this month of Ramadan when the Quran was revealed, and which is a month of sacrifice and worship that Allah chose for His beloved, our Imam, to be martyred. Allah chose for him a time and place for his birth, and He chose for him a time and a place for his martyrdom that will shed light on the greatness of Imam Ali. The birth of Imam Ali is in the Kaaba, the house of Allah, and we all know that that was where he was born. But the time is also significant. What month was Imam Ali born in? It was the month of Rajab. And what is special about the month of Rajab? Out of the 12 months of the Islamic calendar, there are 4 months that are known as al-Ashhurul Hurum, or the sacred months. 3 of them are consecutive because they are associated with the Hajj pilgrimage. Dhul Qa'dah, Dhul Hijjah, and Muharram. Dhul Hijjah is the month of Hajj. Dhul Qa'dah was the month before Hajj, when many people would leave their homes and they would travel and make their way to Mecca in order to perform the pilgrimage. And then throughout the month of Dhul Hijjah and the month of Muharram, people would return to their own homes. So those 3 months, they were special months of worship because of the Hajj pilgrimage. And during that time, warfare was prohibited and peace ruled in Arabia, even though there was no police force, there was no powerful army, there was no strong central government, because of the respect of those months, which were sacred months. But that's only 3 of the 4 months. There was a 4th month. What is the 4th sacred month? It is not consecutive, it is the month of Rajab. Because there was a minor pilgrimage or an umrah that used to be performed in the month of Rajab. Even till today, many people
if they have that tawfiq and that blessing from Allah, they go for al-Umrah al-Rajabiyya, the Umrah in the month of Rajab. That is one of the sacred months. It wasn't a major pilgrimage, which was the Hajj, but it was an important pilgrimage that was performed even before the days of Islam in Jahiliyyah, and it was performed in the Islamic period as well until today. And because of the sanctity of that pilgrimage as well, the month of Rajab was also created or made by Allah an inviolable month, a sacred month, in which warfare and bloodshed and aggression is permitted. So people who are going to Mecca and in Mecca and returning from the pilgrimage, they will be safe and they will be able to perform their worship without difficulty. So Allah chose the middle of the month of Rajab for the birth of Imam Ali, because it was a sacred month and there would be many people who would come for pilgrimage. And so this miracle that is associated with the birth of Imam Ali, it would not be forgotten as an event that was witnessed by a few people in the city of Mecca, and maybe many of them for their own jealousy or their own personal reasons. They would have tried to hide it and conceal it and prevent people from finding out about it. So the place in which Imam Ali was born, that was chosen by Allah to be his own house. And even the time was a time when there would be witnesses from Mecca and from outside of Mecca in the sacred month, the month of pilgrimage and Umrah. And that is the reason, or perhaps one of the reasons, why our first Imam was born on the 13th of Rajab. Although it was a period of Jahiliyyah, but it was a time and a place when there would be witnesses, and it would be known that this is a special birth and a special person who has come into the human family for the guidance of humanity and for the leadership of the Muslims and the mu'mineen in particular. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And that is why it is widely transmitted, not just from the sources of Ahlul Bayt. One of the prominent books of hadith in the Sunni world is the Mustadrak of Al-Hakim al-Nisaburi, and he mentions in Al-Mustadrak that it is widely transmitted and well known that Imam Ali alayhi salam was born in the Kaaba. So this is not just an exclusively Shi'i narration or a belief, and it is not something that depends on one hadith or one chain of transmission. It was widely known at the time that Imam Ali was honored by Allah with that special birth. And this is not just a virtue or an honor that Allah bestowed upon Imam Ali. It was to introduce him to humanity and to show that his person and his character, his teachings and his life and decisions and everything about him are intimately associated with Allah and with the religion of Allah. So there is no separation between Imam Ali in every aspect of his life and the Creator whom he worshipped and whom he served and to whom he guided humanity in order for them to achieve salvation. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So this is the birth of Imam Ali. And then the martyrdom of Imam Ali is in the month of Ramadan. And in that period, in the month of Ramadan, when people are most closely associated with the Masjid. Because it was a custom, and even till the present day it is a custom, that in the last 10 days of the month of Ramadan, people would do i'tikaf, which is a worship while you are fasting, you make a covenant that you will stay only in the masjid in order to engage in worship and to dedicate yourself to the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is an act of worship that was performed by our beloved Prophet Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa alih, and by our Imams. We have narrations from Imam Ali, from Imam Hassan, from our other Imams about the importance and about the performance of i'tikaf. And this can be performed at other times of the year as well. Sometimes people perform i'tikaf in Rajab if they fast a recommended or a voluntary fast, and they make that commitment or that covenant to stay in the masjid. But the most common and the most prevalent time for i'tikaf is in the month of Ramadan. And in particular, during the last 10 days of the month of Ramadan. So this is when people are more attentive to worship. And just like we mentioned for the birth of Imam Ali, Allah chose a place where it would be in the eyes and in the sight of the people. For the martyrdom of Imam Ali, Allah also chose his sacred month. And that period of the month when people are more likely to be attending the masjid, or at least to have some familiarity with what is transpiring in the masjid. So the people of Kufa, maybe they would come to the masjid or they would hear the news of the masjid regularly. But on the last 10 days of the month of Ramadan, even people from outside of the city of Kufa, they may have saved up and prepared in order to be able to embark on that spiritual journey of i'tikaf. And there would have been many people in Masjid al-Kufa in these nights who would not otherwise be in that city, because it is a time of worship. So Allah chose that place and that time for the martyrdom of Imam Ali alayhi salam. And this is also for us to understand that if you want to appreciate ibadah, whether it be salat or saum or zakat or hajj, and if you want to understand the Quran and its message and its implementation, then you cannot separate that from the obedience to and from the teaching of Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. So tonight when we do the du'as and the worship of the nights of Qadr, we will begin by saying, Allahumma la'an qatalata amir al-mu'mineen. So tomorrow night when we do the a'mal of Laylatul Qadr, and the same thing we did on the eve of the 19th, this night between the 20th and the 21st of the month of Ramadan. This night and tomorrow in the day, that will be a period for us to worship Allah, to remember the revelation of the Quran, but we can say that symbolically our entrance to the Quran is through the gate of Imam Ali, who is the gate of the city of knowledge and the means of access to our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So in our previous majlis, we spoke about one aspect of the teaching of Imam Ali, which was his instruction about the period of youth, when we are young. And there are lessons in there for those of us who are young and we want to make the most of our youth. And for those of us who are no longer young, but we also have to orient our life according to the values and the teachings of Islam. Or we may have children now in our families, our own children, our nephews and nieces, and the members of our family who are young, and we want to bring them up with the values that will give them success in this world and that will give them salvation in the hereafter. So inshallah, I will continue with a few of the sayings of Imam Ali about youth, and then inshallah we will move forward in our discussion. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. It is narrated from Imam Ali that he says that there are 4 kinds of intoxication that a person may sometimes suffer from, that are not caused by drugs or by substances, but that are caused by circumstances that we have within our life. Now, the Quran tells us, لا تقربوا الصلاة وأنتم سكارى. Do not approach the prayer when you are intoxicated. And the very obvious and the very surface meaning of that is that a person should not enter or approach the prayer, God forbid, if they are intoxicated on alcohol. And some people think that is the meaning of this verse, but that should be something that goes without saying. In reality, even before the public prohibition and the publicity of the prohibition of wine and intoxicants, it was known from the character and from the teaching of the Prophet and those closest to him that intoxicants, wine, and those substances that overpower our intellect, they are condemned. Ahlul Bayt have told us that whatever people may attribute to the previous prophets falsely, every prophet came and preached the prohibition of intoxicants. And that is why those who were very close to our prophet, it is narrated from them that they did not wait for the prophet to publicly condemn it in Medina. They abstained from those substances from the very moment that they became Muslim. Very famously, Ja'far al-Tayyar, the brother of Imam Ali alayhi salam, he was known as abstaining from any kind of intoxicants because he was the brother of Imam Ali. He was the son of Abu Talib. He was a very close companion and follower and relative of the Prophet. So this was the character that was known of the pious Muslims even before the public prohibition of wine. So when the Quran says, لا تقربوا الصلاة وأنتم سكارى, do not approach the prayer when you are intoxicated, don't take it just to that obvious meaning which should go without saying. And a Muslim should not have any kind of closeness to intoxicants at any point in their life. Whether you are praying or whether you are with friends, whether you are worshiping or whether you are enjoying yourself, intoxicants should not be part of the life of a Muslim at all. And that is why the ahadith of Ahlul Bayt tell us that this verse, it has a deeper meaning. In one hadith from our 6th Imam, Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salam, we are told that it refers in particular to sakratun nawm, the intoxication of sleep. Many of us, we may have had that experience that we have a late night and when we wake up to pray, we're only half awake. And so it is not a very attentive prayer. It is just kind of a formality. Or sometimes it might be, and this was more common in previous generations, the difficult prayer was not Fajr because people woke up early to take advantage of the tranquility and the early light and the weather that was often more pleasant and agreeable in Fajr time, but they would have a hard time staying awake until Isha. And so maybe Salatul Isha, that would be the prayer when they would be somewhat sleepy and drowsy, because if they have an early morning, then you get sleepy at night. that is also the philosophy of Salatul Ghufayla. Ghufayla means that you are ghafil or forgetful. What would sometimes happen is that at sunset people would pray Maghrib, maybe they would have iftar or they would have their dinner, and then within half an hour or so, by the time it got dark, they would fall asleep. And they would forget to pray Salatul Isha. So Salatul Ghufayla, it helps us fill that time and make sure that we don't miss Salatul Isha. So whether it be in the middle of the day or in the beginning of the day or at the end of the day, sometimes we are drowsy when we pray. And that is a form of intoxication because it takes away our ability to think and our ability to reason, and it takes away our presence of mind. And so the Imam tells us that this is what the Quran is reminding you. Do not approach the prayer when you are drowsy. First, wake yourself up. What you can do in the moment to wake yourself up, and ideally arrange your schedule so that you are not always drowsy at the time of prayer and that you are able to perform the prayer with presence of mind. And then we have a more comprehensive explanation from our first Imam, Imam Ali alayhi salatu wassalam. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. He says, Asnafu sukri arba'a. The forms of intoxication are 4. And remember that this is something that we should associate with our obligation to perform our prayer. These types of intoxication, they might distract us from performing a worthy prayer. And therefore, it is important for us to try to remove that distraction, remove that intoxication, so that we can focus and that we can actually concentrate on our prayer. One of them, the Imam says, is sukru shabab. Youth is itself intoxication, because there are so many things that excite you and so many things that distract you. Many times you have a short attention span. Many times you have many things that you would rather be doing than that which is going to be useful for you in this world and in the hereafter. That is part of God's created nature. Sukru shabab is the reality of youth, that you get distracted. But then Allah also gave you willpower, and He also gave you intellect. And we use our intellect in order to try to develop the skills in our youth that we will need and that will assist us when we are older. So this is not an excuse for us to ignore our obligations or our prayers, but rather it is a reminder that it will take more attention and more focus when you are young to concentrate than it might take when you are older, more experienced, and more mature. But because of that, it is also more valuable and more blessed if in your youth you use that effort to focus on your worship and to peel away those curtains and those veils of distraction. Now, those of us who are older, we might say, all right, I don't have that intoxication. The second thing that the Imam mentions is wasukrul mal. When you have money, that also brings intoxication. There are actually studies that tell us that people who are wealthier, often they tend to be more educated. They often tend to have many more opportunities in life, but they are not as good at distinguishing the facial expressions of people they meet than those who are poor. So if somebody is maybe not wealthy, and there is somebody with them who is sad, or is worried, or is scared, that person will likely have a better chance of appreciating the feeling of the person next to them and then being able to respond appropriately. When people become wealthier, they also become somewhat more isolated from the sufferings and the experiences, and sometimes even from the feelings of other people. They become callous. Maybe they justify that this is just the way the world is. What can I do? I don't want to put my own life in jeopardy for the sake of somebody else. Sometimes people who have less are more generous, even if their generosity causes them to suffer economically or financially, than those people who are blessed by Allah with abundance. This is what Imam Ali describes. He says, just like youth is a form of intoxication, the second form of intoxication is sukrul mal. Wealth brings intoxication. And Allah knows best. Perhaps this is one of the reasons why Hajj is wajib on the wealthy. But there is no substitute for those who are poor. There are some obligations that they have certain conditions, and then if you are not able to perform them, then there is a substitute. For example, if you are sick, you don't have an obligation to fast because fasting is going to be harmful to you. But then if you remain sick and you are unable to perform that fast until the next year, you cannot make up the fast or do the qada, then you give a fidya, an amount of food to the needy if you can afford it, and that is a compensation for the inability to fast. Allah knows best, but maybe one of the reasons why Hajj is obligatory on the wealthy and there is no compensatory act for those who are not wealthy is because the sickness that brings a complacency afflicts the wealthy more than it afflicts the poor. And therefore they are in need of that journey and that sacrifice and that suffering of Hajj more so than those who are less wealthy. And you can experience that yourself. If any of you have gone for Hajj, or if you have heard people who have gone for Hajj, I've experienced this numerous times. A wealthy person goes for Hajj and they have a deluxe package, a good hotel with running water and electricity and an air-conditioned tent in Mina, and they come back and they remember all of the things that went wrong. You can experience this. Maybe some of you are like myself and you have that short leash and that frustration, or you've heard it from others, and this is not a judgment, but it's just to recognize the complacency that we have. It's not to look down on other people or to scold them if they complain, but rather we should look within ourselves in order to understand that this is the reality of how sometimes we become shallow without realizing it. So the bus is a little bit late, the air conditioning didn't work, the group was not as organized as it should have been, or the authorities, they made mistakes, and all of those criticisms are valid and they are true. They should be brought up in order to improve in the future, because we should not just be willing to accept a lack of professionalism. But it shouldn't come out in the form of a complaint that I've had it with Hajj, I'm glad I fulfilled my obligation, I don't want to go back. So if you note things that are wrong and you want to improve, good. That is how society improves and rectifies its mistakes. But in many cases you will also hear, that's the last time I go. And that is because we don't appreciate what an honor and what a gift from Allah it is to be able to go for Hajj. Every single night in this month of Ramadan we pray that, oh Allah, I ask you an taj'alani min hujjaj baytik al-haram, to make me among those people who can go for Hajj. This was the dua of Ahlul Bayt. And it was their practice that they would go for Hajj every year if they were able and there was no sickness or there was no other cause that prevented them from going for Hajj. And then you go to many people who did not have as luxurious a Hajj. Maybe they had to save up for years. And they didn't even have a hotel. They were sleeping under the elements in Mecca or in Mina. And they didn't have all of their meals taken care of in a very luxurious manner, but they would scrape whatever they could with difficulty. And then you ask them, how was your Hajj experience? Alhamdulillah, it was a dream for my life. That dream was fulfilled. I couldn't ask for anything more. So you can experience that sometimes there is sukrul mal, an intoxication that comes from wealth. And I'm not talking about billionaires. I'm not talking about those people who have more than they can count and more than they can ever spend. Every one of us who has been blessed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with our basic needs, we can relate to the fact that sometimes our wants take precedence over our obligations. We feel stingy with something that is not even ours. And we sometimes are hesitant to contribute to worthy causes, and that is all sukrul mal, the intoxication of either possessing or wanting wealth too much. So first the Imam says there is sukru shabab. Youth is an intoxication. Then there is sukrul mal. Wealth is an intoxication. Then sukrun naum, which was mentioned in the hadith earlier. When you are drowsy and when you are sleepy, many times as children we use that strategy, wait till your parents are about to sleep and then tell them something that if they were more alert, maybe they would take a strict position on, or they would say no, but when they're drowsy they might easily say yes or let something pass. So when we are drowsy, that makes us a little bit less able to reason and understand what is going on around us. And then the fourth thing the Imam mentions is sukrul mulk, the intoxication of power. And it doesn't just refer to kings. Many of us, we have a small kingdom, and maybe it's my household, maybe I own my own business, maybe there is another area where I have a kingdom that I rule, and I might be a tyrant, not at the level of Fir'aun who ruled all of Egypt, or Numrud who ruled all of Mesopotamia, but within my own house, everyone's afraid of me. Within my own place of business, all of those who work under me, they are afraid of my temper and afraid that maybe I will say or do something that is unjust. So 4 types of intoxication Imam Ali mentions. Sukru shabab, youth is a form of intoxication. Sukrul mal, wealth is a form of intoxication. Sukrun naum, sleepiness or drowsiness, it brings us a form of intoxication. And sukrul mulk, when we have power or authority, a kingdom that we are in charge of, that also makes us complacent, and sometimes it takes away our ability to reason and makes us arrogant. Now, all of us are subjected at different times and in different circumstances of our life to these different kinds of intoxication. And one of the best ways for us to cure ourselves, if you're rich, the cure is not to give away all your money and become poor. If you have power, the cure is not for you to say, I'm going to sell my company, I'm going to put somebody else in charge of my responsibilities, and I'm going to then turn my back to the opportunities or the responsibilities that Allah has given me. Or if you are drowsy, then you cannot force yourself not to be subject to the physical laws of your body. You will get sleepy, you will get hungry, you will have those human needs and feelings. But one of the beautiful ways, and maybe this is why Imam Ali alayhi salatu wasalam, sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad, he describes these as a form of intoxication, a form of overcoming the intellect, is to give us a hint that one of the ways that you can cure these intoxications is at the time of your prayer, think about those different things that overpower your intellect and your reason, and commit that, oh Allah, I will not let anything come between me and you. So, for example, Sukru Shabab. Then the time for prayer comes. I may have a game that I am playing. I may be having a wonderful time with my friends. Maybe I'm more responsible. I'm studying for a test, and it's a good thing that I am doing. But the time for prayer comes, and I say that, oh Allah, I am going to prioritize your pleasure over my pleasure, and even over my other worldly responsibilities. And that helps you over, you are still a young person. So you will still have those powerful emotions and hormones and all of those things that children and that young adults have. But your prayer will help you focus and discipline yourself even in the face of all of the temptations that the world will throw at you. Then, sukrun nawm. Whether we are young or whether we are old. Wake myself up for prayer so that, and I might sleep afterwards if I need to sleep, but doing wudu helps us wake up. If you still feel that you are drowsy and you have time, do the adhan, do the iqamat, maybe even have a bite to eat or drink so that you can focus, and that helps discipline yourself and helps you control your schedule. Just making that habit that I am going to make sure I perform my prayers on time. So even if you have a late night, then Fajr will be a bookend in your day. Dhuhr and Asr will be a marker in your day. So you don't pass your entire day and not realize where the time went. It'll take you out of that intoxication. Sukrul ma. If I say that I am going to make sure, especially at the time of my prayer, that I commit that I will not let my wealth be an obstacle between me and God. Then I take away one curtain that shields me from Allah. And the same thing applies to power. Prayer is when you can practice humility. In fact, the very movements of prayer, they are a gradual increase in humility. So you start Allahu Akbar when you are standing, and when you say Allahu Akbar, Allah is greatest, you are symbolically turning your back to everything in this world and facing the Qibla, facing Allah. And then during the course of prayer, you bow down in ruku'. And so you are coming closer and becoming more humble before Allah. And then the peak of your prayer is where? In sujood, when you are showing the greatest humility and vulnerability before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So prayer is one of the best ways to remove that intoxication or arrogance of power from our heart. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So these were a few of the reminders of Imam Ali, in particular with regard to our youth and the importance of valuing our time that has been given to us by Allah. There is another stage of the life of Imam Ali that we often don't give sufficient attention to, and that is the period after the death of the Prophet, but before people publicly gave their allegiance to Imam Ali, a period of about 25 years, when Imam Ali alayhi salam was living under the rule of other caliphs who claimed to be the successors of the Prophet. And Imam Ali, he had a very special and a very wise way that he dealt with that situation. Briefly, I want to just remind myself and us of the lessons we learned from that stage in the life of our Imam. Now, in principle, Imam Ali was justified in opposing those who oppressed him with every fiber of his being. Regardless of the consequences, he did not owe them allegiance or obedience or even any kind of advice or kindness. But although Imam Ali did not owe them any kind of kindness, Imam Ali did not define his response on the basis of what those who oppressed him or took his position deserved, but rather on the basis of what was the need of the Muslim Ummah and this infant community that had been established by the Prophet, and in honoring the role of the Imam for the Ummah and in strengthening the Ummah, Imam Ali was strengthening that lamp of guidance for all of humanity. And that defines the role of Imam Ali during that period of oppression. And that should be the way that guides the words and the deeds of the followers and the lovers of Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhim as-salam. Yes, we remember the oppression that Ahlul Bayt faced. Yes, sometimes people will mock you, sometimes people will oppress you, sometimes people will look down on you. In extreme cases, people may even say that you are not Muslim. But then, how do you respond? Not based on what they said or what they did. Not even based on what is true or what is it that they deserve. But based on what is most helpful and most constructive for Islam and for Muslims and for humanity. It doesn't matter what the other person deserves, because you should not treat them based on what they deserve, but rather based on what you deserve and what is the character that you learned from Ahlul Bayt. And sometimes there are things that are true, and this is a common problem now, especially in this age. People say, well, if it's in our books, people will read it anyway, and we should not be afraid to say what is true. Ahlul Bayt did not say everything that is true. They always said what is true, but they did not say everything that was true unless it was a place and a time that would lead to a good result. And if you want to know that character of Imam Ali, then I'll give you one incident from when Imam Ali was the governor of the Muslim world in Kufa, almost 5 years. Imam Ali was the sole authority and ruler. He was the governor. And he opposed the practice of Taraweeh prayers because it was a bid'ah and an innovation that was not taught or practiced by the Prophet. So after Imam Ali now had become the caliph, people had pledged allegiance. They did not know all of these details. Many of them were new Muslims. They only accepted Islam after the death of the Prophet, and even those who had been Muslims before. Now for 25 years something has become a custom, so they thought that this was the way things should be. They come to Imam Ali, they said, appoint for us an Imam to lead Taraweeh prayers in Masjid al-Kufa. Now, Imam Ali, he is the one to preserve the authenticity of the teachings of the Prophet. He said, I will not do this. And you should not perform Taraweeh prayers because this was not the practice or the teaching of the Prophet. Yes, there are nawafil in the month of Ramadan, and yes, you should recite the Quran in the month of Ramadan, but it is not meant to be a single congregation that everybody attends. Maybe I will recite one verse and I will pause for 10 minutes to think about it, and you will recite the surah in a little bit different manner, faster or slower, according to your individual state and your spiritual needs. And so there is a different philosophy for the nawafil than for the wajib prayers. They are congregational, and these are to be individual and personal and intimate between you and Allah. The Imam said this, and then what did people say? Wa Ramadana, wa sunnata umara. What is going to happen to our custom and our habit in the month of Ramadan? And when Imam Ali said that they are not willing to accept, then he said that you do what you want to do. I am not going to bring the sword, and I am not going to compel your behavior. I have given you the message. And if you are not ready or willing to accept, then Imam Ali said that my job is to go and to teach and to raise people who understand the proper sunnah and the purpose of the teachings of the Prophet, and don't just superficially go with what is custom and what they are used to. So you see that Imam Ali, it was true that Taraweeh is a bid'ah. But did he impose it? Did he enforce it? He told people, and then he left them to their devices, and he adopted a different means to guide. And that is why you and I know that Taraweeh prayers are not authentic and they are bid'ah, because Imam Ali, he passed on the true sunnah of the Prophet that was preserved by the Imams from his progeny. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So everybody who is a lover and a follower of Imam Ali, we should remember that our obligation is even with those who may say we are not Muslims. That is not for them to judge. Even for those who may have ignorance or injustice with respect to our beliefs, respond and interact and speak in a way that brings you closer to the purpose that Allah has sent Islam with, which is to bring illumination and enlightenment to humanity. Just one brief example. In the time of the second caliph, some of the different cities that had recently been conquered by the Muslims, Ray, present-day Tehran, Hamadan, Isfahan, they communicated and said that we should all gather together, all of our strength, and try to defeat the Muslims once and for all. And this caused great fear in Medina. The second caliph gathered together many different companions and said, what should we do? And his plan was that he would gather the largest army possible from Sham and from Iraq and from Medina, and he himself would go and make sure that the defeated enemy was not able to gain their strength and then counterattack. Imam Ali was there. He said that if you call the army from Sham, then the Romans will attack them. If you call your army from Yemen, then the Abyssinians will attack them. If you take all of your army from Medina, then the Arabs who had just recently accepted Islam will now come and they will attack the city of Medina. The proper thing is to remember that in the time of the Prophet, we never fought on the basis of numbers, we fought on the basis of faith. And therefore, trust in the faith that Allah has given us. And divide your army in Basra into 3 parts. One part should stay within the city to defend it. One part should take care of the neighboring regions. And 1/3 of your army can go and support those who are fighting on the frontiers of Islam. And do the same thing in the other regions so that it doesn't seem like you are desperate, but rather they know that there are reinforcements and the Muslims are not without their own source of strength and defense. And it was this advice of Imam Ali to somebody who had oppressed him that allowed the Muslims to achieve victory in that battle and to counteract the threat. That was the barakah of the presence of Imam Ali. That even his enemies used to pray, may we not survive for a day when Imam Ali is not in our midst. Imagine what love the friends of Imam Ali must have had. Imagine what it must have been like for the family of Imam Ali when they saw that he had been struck with a poisoned sword. Initially, when some people saw the wound, we have narrations that the companions of Imam Ali, Amr ibn al-Hamiq al-Khuza'i, Habib ibn Amr and others, they said that, oh, our Imam, this is not that severe a wound, at least from the outside. It doesn't seem like it is worse than the wounds you have suffered before. We pray that you will achieve recovery. We pray that you will survive. And Imam Ali, he would say that, no, this is what Allah has promised me. The Prophet told me, when when I would come back from the battles in the early days of Islam, crying that Allah did not give me martyrdom as I had wished for, the Prophet told me, my beloved Prophet told me that a time will come when my beard, which will be white at that time, will be dyed red with the blood from my own head, and that I will die the death of a martyr. This is that promised time that I was told about. Oh, my companions, this is the time to bid farewell to you, because I will not recover from this wound in this life. One of those people who said that was the companion of the Imam, Habib ibn Amr, who said that when he was visiting the Imam in his home after he had been struck. And the Imam's daughter, Kulthum alayhi salam, she heard the Imam say that I shall not recover from this wound. And she began to weep. And the Imam, he turned to his daughter with compassion and with love. He said that, oh my daughter, what is it that makes you weep? She said that I just heard you say that you are going to be martyred from this wound that you will not recover. And the Imam said that, oh my daughter, if you saw what my eyes are seeing, then you would be glad, because I see before me the messenger of God, Rasulullah, and all of the prophets standing in a line. I see the angels of Allah have descended from the heavens, and my beloved messenger is saying to me that come to us, O Amir al-Mu'mineen, where we are is better for you than where you are. The Imam said that I am going to that heavenly abode. It is just a few more hours before my tribulation and my suffering in this world will come to an end. But the feeling of the family and the companions of the Imam is expressed by the weeping of one of the companions, Asbagh ibn Nubata. When the Imam, he invited his companions for a final farewell when he was on his deathbed. It is said that the companions came in, and when they saw the weakness of the Imam, they wept with such a loud voice that Imam Hassan came to them, and he said, I ask you that if you are weeping, cry in a soft voice, because the daughters of Imam Ali, they are in this house, and if they hear your tears, then they will not be able to control their own grief. So all of the companions, they wept in a quieter voice, but Asbagh ibn Nubata was not able to control his grief, and he wept loudly until Imam Ali, he opened his eyes and he looked at Asbagh. He said that, oh my companion, why are you weeping? You should know that I have been promised paradise, and I am not sad at having finally achieved that prayer which I have had in my heart since I was young. Asbagh said that, oh my Imam, I know that you are going to paradise, but I weep for myself. I weep for those of us who will be deprived of your presence. I weep for our solitude and our grief after your death. The Imam, he prayed for Asbagh, and he said that there will be a plan that Allah has for humanity, and Allah's plan and His purpose will be accomplished. According to one narration, Zainab at this time, or soon after, she came to Imam Ali, and this is the daughter of Imam Ali. She knows what is the heart and the soul of Imam Ali when he is bidding farewell to those nearest and dearest to him, and when her own heart is filled with grief, she comes with a very unusual request. She says that, oh my father, I've heard from Ayman the story of Karbala. Before you go from this world to your eternal abode, I want to hear the story of Karbala from your own lips. Imam Ali is on his deathbed. He has been wounded, and now in a weak voice, Imam Ali gathers his family towards him. They come and approach, and Imam Ali tells the story of Karbala, because it is only the story of Karbala, that greatest sacrifice and that greatest tragedy that can give consolation at a time like the martyrdom of Imam Ali. And now this majlis is one in which the musibah is recited by Imam Ali. He will tell them of the martyrdom of all of the companions of the Imam, how even those noble heroes from the family of the Prophet will give their life, how Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas will be martyred. And then Imam Ali turns to his beloved son Hassan, and he breaks down in tears, and he says that, oh my beloved Hassan, that will be the day when you will be surrounded by your enemy, and they will approach you from all sides, and you will not know which enemy to face, because they will attack you all at once. Imam Hussein will lower his head in prostration in gratitude to Allah, and the enemy will approach and raise that sword above the head of the Imam that will make him a martyr, and that will bring the greatest grief into the hearts of the family of the Prophet in Karbala. Imam Zainul Abidin will look out from his tent, and he will see the head of his beloved father, the grandson of the Prophet, raised on a spear. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. وَسَيَعْلَمُ الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا أَيَّ مُنْقَلَبٍ يَنْقَلِبُونَ. Ya Hussein.
Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein. This earth has become orphan. 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 On this day, without you, this earth has become orphan. On this day, without you, this earth has become orphan. Zainab, from your head the shade of Ali taken. On this day, without you, this earth has become orphan. On this day, without you, this earth has become orphan. Today the oceans weep and the wind wails. The sky has fallen and the ground turns pale. On this day, even the strongest mountain shaken. On this day, without you, this earth has become orphan. On this day, without you, this earth has become orphan. Today they silent the peak of eloquence. Today has tested the peak of patience. Today Abbas, the mighty lion, is broken. On this day, without without you, this earth has become orphan. On this day, without you, this earth has become orphan. Zainab collapses as Haydar's eyes close. The heavens tremble hearing Zainab's woes. Baba, don't leave me. Baba, I beg you, awaken. On this day, without you, this earth has become on this day, without you, this earth has become orphan. Zainab now starts a journey of pain. You will be brought back to Kufa in chains, saying, go Baba, in your city I'm forsaken. On this day, without you, this earth has become orphan. On this day, without you, this earth has become orphan. Ali foresaw the deaths of Hassan and Hassan. With his own death, he felt the death of both his sons. Struck by a sword, and the sword had been poisoned. On this day, without you, this earth has become orphan. On this day, without you, this earth has become orphan. This earth has become orphan. This earth has become orphan. Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein.
حسبنا الله نعم المولى علي رحم الله من نادى يا علي حسبنا الله نعم المولى علي رحم الله من نادى يا علي سوگند به جلوه داور سوگند به جان پیامبر سوگند به سوره کوثر سوگند به حضرت حیدر حق با علی تا به ابد مبتدا علی هم ابتدای عالم و هم انتها علی گفته به وقت خلقت ماضی به لب خدا یا مظهر العجائب و یا مرتضی علی یا مظهر العجائب و یا مرتضی علی دلبرم حیدر باورم حیدر دلبرم حیدر باورم حیدر من غلام حیدرم حیدر من غلام حیدرم حیدر حسبنا الله نعم المولا علی رحم الله من نادى یا علی حسبنا الله نعم المولا علی رحم الله من نادى یا علی حسبنا الله نعم المولا علی رحم الله من نادى یا علی سوگند به عالم بالا سوگند به جنت الاعلی سوگند به صاحب دنیا سوگند به چادر زهرا عشق علی تمامی لطف جهان ماست راز حلال زادگی کودکان ماست بر او پناه میبرم هر ظهر و صبح و شام شکر خدا که نام علی در اذان ماست شکر خدا که نام علی در اذان ماست بک یا الله به رسول الله بک یا الله به رسول الله اشهد ان علیا ولی الله اشهد ان علیا ولی الله حسبنا الله نعم المولا علی رحم الله من نادى یا علی حسبنا الله نعم المولا علی رحم الله من نادى یا علی
صلوات
Ya Hussein, 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 Ya Hussein.
Inshallah, I'll recite this part a couple times so that we can all repeat it together. By the Lord of the Kaaba, victory is Ali's this day. In the midst of prayer, at the break of dawn, as his life slowly bleeds away. By the Lord of the Kaaba, victory is Ali's this day. In the midst of prayer at the break of dawn as his life slowly bleeds away. Everybody please. By the Lord of the Kaaba, victory is Ali's this day. In the midst of prayer at the break of dawn as his life slowly bleeds away. Victory was his on the day he was born from a light before time's dawn. Then when none would dare, but he testified that God was one alone. Victory was his at our prophet's side, where he stood since his youth. As a warrior on the battlefield or as a scholar spreading truth. Victory was his when the prophet raised his hand for all to see and said he, Ali, has leadership over all who follow me. By the Lord of the Kaaba, victory is Ali's this day. In the midst of prayer at the break of dawn as his life slowly bleeds away. Through the messenger's trials, the insults, the pain he endured, Ali would stay by his side and give his life to the word. Through boycotts, assassins, and spears, he forged on ahead, still steadfast. With bravery and his sacrifice, he stood apart from the rest. By the Lord of the Kaaba, victory is Ali's this day. In the midst of prayer at the break of dawn as his life slowly bleeds away. Victory was his though the prophet died and he buried his brother himself. And in that time leadership was passed over him and he'd have to contend. Victory was his on the day he entombed his one beloved wife. The apple of our prophet's eye in a grave hidden from strife. By the Lord of the Kaaba, victory is Ali's this day. In the midst of prayer at the break of dawn, as his life slowly bleeds away, caliphate then fell in his lap when they begged him to take up the reins. He found within it no worth, only tests and trials and pains. Though they begged him to lead, they followed as followers passed. For some would heed not command, others harbored a treachery vast. By the Lord of the Kaaba, victory is Ali's this day. In the midst of prayer at the break of dawn, as his life slowly bleeds away, victory was his when he entered the mosque and awoke a man from sleep. With a poisoned sword and a hatred strong that festered long and deep, victory was his when he praised his Lord and began the morning prayer. When he put his head upon the earth and a sword cut through the air, victory was his when his head was struck, poison blood ran down his beard. Now victory is his at the Prophet's side with Al-Kawthar running clear. By the Lord of the Kaaba, victory is Ali's this day. In the midst of prayer at the break of dawn, as his life slowly bleeds away. By the Lord of the Kaaba, victory. In the midst of prayer at the break of dawn, as his life slowly bleeds away. O Qa'im, stand, our need is strong, calamity great, your absence long. O Qa'im, stand, our need is strong, calamity great, your absence long. Prepare our hearts, prepare our souls, prepare our bodies and our minds, so we may walk the narrow path, so we may serve you when it's time, so we may walk the narrow path, so we may serve you when it's time. O Mahdi, son of Hassan, hasten, hasten your return. O Mahdi, son of Hassan, hasten, hasten your return. Ya Hujjat ibn al-Hassan, ajil ala dhuhurik. Ya Hujjat ibn al-Hassan, ajil ala dhuhurik. Ya Hujjat ibn al-Hassan, عجل على ظهورك يا حجة ابن الحسن عجل على ظهورك عجل على ظهورك صلوات على محمد وآل محمد.
السلام عليك يا رسول الله، السلام على علي أمير المؤمنين، السلام على فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين، السلام على الحسن والحسين سيدي شباب أهل الجنة، السلام على علي بن الحسين زين العابدين، السلام على محمد بن علي الباقر، السلام على جعفر بن محمد الصادق، السلام على موسى بن جعفر الكاظم، السلام على علي بن موسى الرضا، السلام على محمد بن علي الجواد، السلام على علي بن محمد الهادي، السلام على الحسن بن علي الزكي العسكري، السلام على الحجة بن الحسن القائم المهدي صلوات الله عليه أجمعين.